I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. How many shows have we done about God? Has it been a lot? 10, 20, 100? We're going to do another one about God today because it's on my mind. It's been on my mind for a long time, and I think this is one of those subjects that a lot of people in recovery struggle from. It's one of those subjects that I think turns a lot of people away from a 12-step program, because one of the steps is a higher power of your choosing. There are 2 steps in there at least that talk specifically about God. And this is one of these topics that has come up recently. In my last 2 meetings, we talked about it. We went over We Agnostics last week at my Big Book meeting. And tonight, we went over the first part of how it works. We get up to the end of step 3 before we move on, because the How It Works chapter is just so meaty. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my struggles when it comes to a higher power, and I've got a lot of them. And a lot of this stuff is me overthinking it. I'm an intellectual. I'm into science. I'm into the universe. So how can there really be a God that loves me and is or can be in control of my life that can work for me? And that's where I kind of struggle. So I grew up Catholic. I think anytime we think about the religion of our youth or our childhood or growing up, that kind of paints the picture. I've been to a number of different churches, evangelical churches, black churches, Congregational, Lutheran. I'll never not be a Catholic because it was my first experience. I went through the sacraments. I'm just always going to think of myself as a Catholic. Coming from a Catholic upbringing, I got a lot of problems with the Catholic Church. One of those big problems is the misbehavior of the Catholic Church. At the time, the associate bishop in the Diocese of Springfield confirmed me. This guy later became the full bishop of the Diocese of Springfield, and he left because he was found to have had inappropriate contact with kids. It just seems to be the story of the church. And that's a big turnoff of the priest should be the person who has stepped forward and is the role model, and more often than not, there are stories. Now, it's not all of them, but there are enough stories out there that it turns you off. But a lot of it is just the idea of there is this power greater than me that's out there. And my biggest problem with organized religion is the idea of an afterlife. The more and more I think about the afterlife, it doesn't seem to make sense to me that there is something of some type of life that we float up and we live forever after death. And on the other hand, I'm kind of terrified of dying. I'm terrified of that time where there is nothing, that our consciousness just ends. All of our life experience just comes to an end, and there's nothing more than what we've had. Also, forever is a long time. Do I want to have an immortal soul? Do I want to live forever? Have I been a good enough boy? Have my views on religion put me in such a place that I might be going to the warm place? And I certainly don't want that to happen, an eternity of that. That seems a lot worse than everything is just over. So these are all things that are in my head when we start talking about a power greater than me when it comes to putting your hands into that to stay sober. And it is the agnostic or the atheist view. I think I'm more of an agnostic, that I'll talk about this a little bit. I truly don't believe that I don't believe in any type of higher power. I just don't know what it is. So I can't say I'm an atheist, but I can say agnostic. There are lots of times that I have felt the presence of a higher power. Too many to write off, and yet I overthink it. And I always I wouldn't necessarily be in control, but I feel as though I have to take responsibility and take action. And then I overthink the idea that if I put something into God's hands, am I just being irresponsible and giving too much over and being in denial? This is way too much thought that I'm giving here. I should be giving less thought here. When I get to that point where I am thinking of, here are all the things I need to do to get myself out of this hole, I forget that I have an opportunity to put it in someone else's hands. And I have to work through the whole idea that putting it in somebody else's hands is not doing anything. It's around the aspect of asking for help. And in that sense, I'm not so good. I think what Bill was saying when it talks about God, because if you look back at God in terms of Bill's worldview, when the Big Book was created, Bill was into first century Christianity. He did think through the God issue in the 12 steps as the Jesus Christ idea of God. That was the thought. There's all this thought now, he always wanted this conception of God as you see it. That's not the case at all. From everything that I have learned, it has been first century Christianity, and that Bill was looking to have people get down on their knees and look to Jesus Christ as your Savior. And Jesus Christ will get you to a place where you will be saved. I have to tell you, I'm jealous of the people that I meet in the rooms of AA who are really believers. And these people have incredible sobriety. There are people who I know get on their knees every single morning, every single night. They say their prayers. They legitimately have a higher power in their life. And this higher power works for them. And so I ask, what's different about them than me? Why don't I feel this the way that they feel it? Is this the case that I'm just not opening the door to my heart to allow a higher power in? And I have to say, I think part of that is yes, that I don't open myself up. And I think this has to do with other aspects of me that I don't want to be vulnerable. To open yourself up to a higher power and to say, I'm going to give my will over to a power greater than me, that puts me into a place where I have to be vulnerable. And then I think through God, what if God doesn't exist? And I've done all of this, and I've been vulnerable, and I've just been made a fool. I really have to talk this out with you to think through, why do I have these feelings where it is challenging to have a belief in God, a God that will help me with my sobriety, not just my sobriety, that if I give my will over to the God of my understanding, it will make life better because I'll be doing his will, not mine. And when I really take control and say, only I can do this, and I need to put my nose to the grindstone with everything, that's the only way I'm going to be successful. And giving yourself over to God is a case of taking your foot off the gas pedal from time to time. And I'm not taking my foot off the gas pedal. I'm just doing more and more of taking my own will. This is a big problem for me. It hasn't caused me to drink. I think that's the other thing that confuses me is I'm not drinking. I haven't had a drink in over 10 years. I'm relatively okay. I am not perfect with sobriety, and nobody else is. But I do a lot more than other people do, and it helps me stay sober. And I wanted to throw this out there because there's got to be a lot of you who feel this way. What I'm also hoping is there's a lot of you out there who have figured this out. And sometimes I just need to throw things out to the world just to ask you, if you felt the way I feel, how did you get past it? What were the things that you did that got you through your unbelief to get you to a place that you are sure that there is a God that loves you, that wants the best for you, and that if you've given your will and said, God, direct all my affairs, not just around sobriety, but direct my entire life, that you've done that and you saw the results and you felt something. Because I don't know if I felt something I do. I feel things and then I write it off. And this is one of the challenges of having this podcast is when I'm taping this, I'm just talking into a microphone and it's just me in my little studio with my soundboard and my computer. And in many ways, I'm just talking to myself. The way you experience, we're having a conversation, but I don't hear your part of the conversation. In many ways, like I don't hear God's conversation back to me, but God can hear me just the same as you have this in your ears or driving around out there. So I really wanted to throw that out there and ask your guidance. Now, I've asked some of the old timers about this in the past too. And the old timers have said, you don't have to have a full answer. You just have to seek it out. And seeking it out is part of the journey. If you're on the journey and you're still seeking, even if you're not finding what you're looking for, you're doing it right. Because the action of seeking is part of how you get that level of enlightenment. What are your thoughts there? This was something I was passionate about. Not a long episode. We're short and we're to the point. But it's more of I wanted to talk it through to you. The two kind of groups of people, those who struggle like me with a higher power, who might be able to identify with it. And then those of you out there who definitely have a higher power that works for you. And I want to hear from both of you. Give me your insight of how this works for you, what your seeking was like. You can reach out to me at the website soberfriendspod.com. My email address is matt@soberfriendspod. The Instagram account @soberfriendspod. Write me. Let me know. You've been giving me some book recommendations that I've been looking for. Thank you for that, because I never know where to start with the book. This doesn't have to be sober books. This is just, what do you like? And in a lot of ways, I'm just looking for some fiction stuff because I need to escape. Anyways, I hope I've connected with you on this topic of, God, are you out there? We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod.